Most people think negotiations are won with strong arguments. They prepare facts. They prepare logic. They prepare long explanations. But professional negotiators often win conversations using something much simpler, a single question. In fact, many negotiation experts say that the right question can completely change the direction of a conversation. Instead of pushing harder, the best negotiators step back and ask something unexpected. And that simple question often unlocks information the other side never planned to reveal. Because questions do something powerful. They change the emotional dynamics of the conversation. Instead of defending their position, the other person starts thinking. And thinking opens the door to solutions. Why arguments rarely change minds. When people hear arguments that challenge their position, something interesting happens in the brain. Instead of evaluating the idea calmly, the brain often interprets the situation as a threat. This triggers a defensive reaction. People begin protecting their beliefs instead of questioning them. Psychologists call this defensive reasoning, and it explains why debates often become more intense instead of more productive. The more pressure someone feels, the more strongly they hold on to their position. This is why simply repeating your arguments rarely works. Even if your logic is perfect, the other person may resist it emotionally. But questions create a different psychological effect. Instead of forcing the brain to defend, they invite the brain to explore. And that small difference can completely transform a negotiation. The power of open questions. Not all questions are equally powerful. Some questions lead to short answers, others open the door to deeper thinking. The most effective negotiators use open-ended questions. These are questions that cannot be answered with a simple yes or no. For example, instead of asking, "Do you agree with this?" a skilled negotiator might ask, "What concerns you most about this situation?" This type of question encourages the other person to explain their perspective. And when people begin explaining their perspective, they reveal something extremely valuable. Their interests. Interests are the real drivers behind negotiation decisions. Once you understand what someone truly cares about, finding a solution becomes much easier. The most powerful negotiation issue. One of the most effective questions used in negotiations is surprisingly simple. It is this: what would make this work for you? This question does something remarkable. First, it shows respect. Instead of forcing your solution, you invite the other person to participate. Second, it reveals hidden constraints. Maybe they have deadlines you didn't know about. Maybe they face pressure from their boss. Maybe they simply need reassurance. Third, this question transforms the negotiation dynamic. Instead of two people defending positions, both sides begin designing a solution together. And when people feel involved in creating a solution, they are far more likely to accept it. Why questions create collaboration? Questions change the emotional atmosphere of negotiations. Arguments create pressure. Questions create curiosity. And curiosity naturally leads to collaboration. When someone asks a thoughtful question, it signals something important. It shows that they are listening. It shows that they care about understanding the situation. This builds trust. And trust is one of the most valuable resources in any negotiation. When trust increases, people become more open. They share information, they reveal priorities. And that information makes it easier to design agreements that benefit both sides. This is why experienced negotiators often ask far more questions than they answer. They understand that information is power, and questions are the fastest way to discover it. how to use this question in real life. The next time you enter a difficult conversation, try something different. Instead of preparing a long speech, prepare a few thoughtful questions. Listen carefully to the answers. Look for the concerns behind the words. And when the moment is right, ask the question that can unlock the conversation. What would make this work for you? You might be surprised by what happens next, because people rarely expect cooperation in tense discussions. And when someone introduces cooperation, the entire dynamic of the conversation shifts. Suddenly, the negotiation is no longer a battle. It becomes a shared effort to solve a problem. Great negotiators don't win conversations by talking more. They win by understanding more. And understanding begins with questions. So the next time you face a difficult negotiation, remember this simple strategy. Don't rush to argue. Ask the right question, because sometimes the most powerful move in a negotiation is simply knowing what to ask.